Alright, hello. This is going to be a fairly long video, so I'll try and do timestamps, I guess. I don't know what I'm going to call these categories, but I'm just going to be running through a handful of different items that people like to build on Singed. Uh, constant questions from people all over the board saying, why'd you get this item in this scenario? What do you do with this item? Is this item any good, etc., etc.? What's the best starting item? Um, all that fun stuff. So I thought I'll just do a comprehensive look at a plethora of the items that I picked up. Um, there's a couple items which are pretty popular, like Rod of Ages, that I won't be covering, and like Tear of the Goddess, Archangel stuff, like the older, more like Singed 420 stuff, and like Death Cap as well. Um, that I'm not going to cover because they're not anywhere near being meta. And I wanted to try and constrain it a little bit. I mean, I've got things like Void Staff and Ardent Sensory in here, so it's not as constrained as I might like to make it, but I see people using these items more so on the successful side than on the just feeding and trolling. Whereas with Rod of Ages, I see a lot of it where it just doesn't work out. And I think these items are defendable, whereas with Rabadons or Rod of Ages, there are very clear reasons why it's not very useful to pick those up, except for like very, very limited situations with like Rabadons. If you're smurfing in low elo, then it's permissible, but if you're smurfing in low elos, then everything is permissible. Just because of the skill disparity, it doesn't really matter what you build, just so long as you're able to achieve what you want to achieve, which I assume is winning. But with the state of League at the moment, you might just want to be building full move speed and just running around a map, griefing. Anyway, massive tangent. There probably will be a lot of those. This is probably going to be a long-winded video. And we're going to start with the most difficult thing, which I'm going to have to dedicate an entire video to in its own right, which is the starting items. This is a real pain in the ass to discuss because there's a lot of maths behind this, but there's also a lot of misinformation online about how these items work and how Singed works. So I keep finding myself running into the like limit of the fandom Wikipedias and stuff like that, where they have a lot of misinformation, and I have to go ask Riot employees to clarify it, and then again the whole debacle. But basically, for the starting items, Corrupting Potion is the best. It gives the most health, most mana, most damage. Okay. There's a lot to explain with that, and I will be making a video because this topic deserves to have its own in-depth look. But here's some of the basic maths. So this is me comparing Corrupting Potion to starting Dark Seal and Refillable. You get more sustain health-wise because you have 3 stacks of... Okay, thank you, client, for just not showing me the tulips. Okay, nice. Well, basically, you get 375 health back from Corrupting Potion if you use all 3 stacks. You get 225 mana back with that as well. Whereas with the refillable potion, you get 2 stacks of it. But if you're pairing it with the 25% plus on healing potions, just potions in general, from the Dark Seal, then that bumps it up a little bit. It is only 31.25 health that it's bolstered by. So the refill gives you 125 health over 12 seconds, so that's about 10 health a second for 12 seconds. And then 25% of the 125 is 31.25, so you add that on top. So with the Dark Seal, one stack of refillable will give you 156.25 health back, which is about 13 health per second. You times that by 2 for the whole refill, and it's only 312.25. Oh, what? It's not 25.50. My bad. But that's still like 60 something less than Corrupting Potion, and you don't have to waste your gold on a Dark Seal. Obviously, there's scenarios where you would want to be starting Dark Seal instead of Corrupting Potion, because Corrupting Potion's damage, I can't remember what it's called, it's something really edgy like Torment of Death or something ridiculous like that, or Torment of Corruption or something, it doesn't matter. That doesn't affect minions, so you won't be doing extra damage to minions, you'll actually be doing less damage because you don't have any AP other than the Adaptive Force. But actually, I'm not even sure if Adaptive Force comes online when... no. I'll talk about it in the video dedicated to this, because there is a lot to go through and I need to chop it down a bit. But yeah, if you're proxying for the first 3 waves, or if you're just doing full proxy, it's more optimal to go Dark Seal and refill, because you get more sustain than if you go Doran's Ring and 2 health pots. As far as I know. Because it's not necessarily that you're getting more health back just on the first 3 waves. You also don't have to fork out the extra money to buy a refillable or more health pots if you're starting this. Because if you start this, then this is 350, and then you should have about enough gold to pick up the Corrupting Potion, so you go into lane with Corrupting Potion and Dark Seal. So the first 3 wave proxy, if you pull it off successfully, is basically just giving yourself a free Dark Seal, as opposed to if you're going into lane normally and just picking up Corrupting Potion. Yeah. It's interesting because I'll have to discuss this in the same video. I'm basically just talking about risk factors and the percentage chance of you going to be able to get that proxy off. But yeah, okay. So we've covered that. The conflict between Corrupting Potion and Dark Seal. Doran's Ring is an interesting one. I've seen people who are very confident on Singed picking up Doran's Ring as first item as opposed to Corrupting Potion. Just because it gives you health and it gives you AP, and it's quite nice to have that bonus damage on the auto attacks. And the mana is alright as well, it's a nice cherry on top, but it's not that important for the item. The 50 ability power is nice, 15 ability, not 50, my god. And the 60 health is alright. I saw it as a reaction to the relatively recent nerf on Singed, where he lost about 30 health in the early game. And a bit of armor, so people were picking up Doran's Ring so they could sort of keep that health. Although it would be nerfing Doran's Ring to being a 30 health, 15 ability power, blah 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 blah. I don't see it being used as much at the moment. I think a lot of people have moved on to Corrupting Potion now that they've seen the like the damage numbers, etc., etc. But it's still a contender. I wouldn't discount it. I like Corrupting Potion is just the best starting item stats wise. But if you're going for just raw damage at the very start, this can be useful to getting First Bloods at level 2, whereas this might not be. And then Doran's Shield. I haven't seen many people picking this up, but it's really useful in certain scenarios. So I personally quite like it into Teemo and Akali, which is quite a weird item choice, I guess. But if you look at it, regenerate up to 40 health over 8 seconds after taking damage from an enemy champion, based on percent health missing, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to care about the 66% effect for ranged champions. But yeah, so with Teemo's Poison, it constantly refreshes this passive. So you keep... the more he auto-attacks you, the longer your regeneration is going to be going on for. So overall, in the lane, what you want to be doing in the Teemo matchup is just surviving till level 6. And then you can just all-in him with your ult and ignite. This is quite useful as far as my experience goes with just staying alive in lane. It gives you no other buff than just the health regen and the basic attacks, and a nice bit of health on top of that. But yeah, I pick it up mainly just so you can heal through, almost as if you're playing Garen if you get auto-attacked periodically enough times, which is definitely going to happen in the Teemo lane. And then with Akali, I quite like it because I really struggle with the Akali lane. It's a really, really difficult one to really like crack open. I've tried the AP items and just trying to match her damage, but the issue is she's always gonna outmaneuver you, and her Q cooldown is so ridiculously low that, and to be fair, it's point blank. It's like trying to dodge a shotgun. It's really difficult. Like I haven't seen anyone be able to dodge point blank Akali Q, so I don't think you're supposed to. But what you can try and negate a bit is her empowered auto attack, because normally what Akali's going to do, she's going to go in for the Q, and then she's going to get an empowered auto attack when she moves out a bit further. She's going to come back in, go for the auto attack. Sometimes they take fleet if they're going top lane, so they'll normally get a move speed buff, and then they'll be able to disengage and then wrap back around, Q, back off, auto attack, back off, etc, etc. This just helps mitigate that a little bit. Just because as soon as she auto attacks you, yeah, it helps out. That's about it for this. I mean, yeah. So with Qs as well, like if she's spamming Qs on you, then you start regenerating your health, which is quite good. This used to be a little bit better for Akali before the Doran Shield changes, because there was also the added lesser damage from auto attacks. Not so much now, but I still think this is a really good pickup if you're struggling with the Akali lane. And then going into like your first recall, ideally, if you're laning, you would have started Corrupting Potion, and then you should ideally have around 700 gold. So you want to pick up Boots of Speed, and then pick up a Doran's Ring. Because Doran's Ring is a good item. And well, it's split. I'm not going to say that it's definitely you go for Doran's Ring and Boots. I've seen a lot of people go for Doran's Rings and Boots of Speed. So in the early game. I sound like an idiot. In the early game, you should have the Boots of Speed, the Corrupting Potion, and the Dark Seal. And that's a nice little trio to have. It gives you a bit of everything that you need in lane. You got AP, you got health, you got mana regen, you got extra damage, extra health regen, extra mana regen. Pretty good. Quite nice. However, this is and this comes down to personal preference, which a lot of things on here will come down to personal preference. That's why I'm trying to keep it a bit broader than I would have liked. Some people will opt instead to go for an amplifying tome, so they can start building it into other items. Because amp tome builds into bloody everything nowadays. The build trees are really uninspired. You pick up an amp tome, and I'm certain you'll find a use for it. And it's only 35 more gold than the Doran's Ring, and it's an investment in a future item as opposed to investing in a dead end item in the hopes that it'll pay off further down the line because you'll be able to get kills with these extra stats. Sort of the same thing with the Dark Seal. When you're buying it, a lot of the time, people are hoping that they'll be able to get the extra stacks, like the glory stacks, and that will help them snowball to recuperate the cost of having to buy the Dark Seal. And that feeds into another thing with starting items where you have 500 free gold as opposed to gold you have to earn. So it changes up the dynamic. So people would get away with first buying Dark Seal because it's not as if they're losing gold because of the investment. It's not like you've gone out and bought a Mage Eyes and it's backfired and then you've used that gold to get no advantage. But yeah, goddamn, I need to stop talking about these bloody starting items. There's too much. They're too much. It's too much to talk about with them. It's ridiculous. First thing in the game, you think like that. You just buy something. There's so much to go into with it. Anyway, these are like intermediate items. They're just main components that are quite useful to pick up before you get your core items. It's also preference and situational. So I've seen a lot of people going for Haunting Guys before they go for Leandri's Torment. I've even seen... Well, obviously you're going to go for this if you're going for this, right? You're not just going to sit on a Blasting Wand and not get the Haunting Guys. Because Haunting Guys is a brilliant item. Like, the passive of it is ridiculously strong with Singed's Q. However, the Haunting Guys in itself is pretty good. So what I've seen a lot of people do is they will pick up Haunting Guys whilst building like a Rylai's or a Hextech Protobelt. And it works out pretty well, if I'm honest. I'm not so sure about it, like, as a strat, because it feels weird to be sinking 1,500 gold into an item you're not building straight away. And building Leandri's is a good item to build first anyway. So, yeah. But I thought I'd mention it just because I've seen it used a fair bit and it has worked out pretty well for a handful of people. Like, I've seen Ankum V2 do it. Who else have I seen do it? Oh goodness, I can't remember names now. That doesn't matter. But yeah, so Haunting Guys as an item in itself is quite nice. It's just a mini Leandri's. Also, if you build it and then you realise the situation of the game has changed and you need to build something else, like you're building Leandri's for being able to crush a tank, for example, but that tank proves to be an awful player and falls behind really quickly and isn't really that much of an issue. You might opt to detour and build into something else which is more relevant to the current game. So like getting a Pro belt so you can gap close on like maybe like a Fed Syndra or something. Or getting a Rylai so you can stick onto people, like that sort of thing. But I'll discuss these a little bit later. Oblivion Orb is really good. I wish the client would work. Don't know why I trusted it. But basically it gives you magic penetration, health, and AP. And it's really nice. Really nice item. People mainly buy this and keep it as it is until like third or fourth item where they build it into the Morello. Just because this is the best magic penetration item in the game, I think, other than maybe Sorcerer's Shoes. I can't remember. I read something about it which was actually quite interesting. I need to find that and source it. So if I find it, I'll put it in the description, obviously. It's kind of costly, but for what it gives you, it's actually really worth it. magic penetration is really nice, especially if it's on an item that you can actually find useful. My main criticism of sorcerer shoes is, sure, it gives you magic penetration, but at what cost? And the cost is actually quite significant, because if you compare it to the other boots, you're actually losing out on a lot. But I'll discuss that at the end. Revolver, if you're using it to build into Hextech Pro Belt, don't ever build Gunblade, waste of money. Actually, I should probably give more thought to Gunblade. Gunblade isn't really useful because the 40 AD just really isn't your thing. You don't need it. Building all of this shit, not useful. League of Blade of Ruin King, I get it, but on Singed, you really don't need it. It can be like kind of useful, but it really isn't in the long run. Like, the cost of it is so ridiculously not worth that you might as well be building something else. And then, see, the allure of Hextech Gunblade is primarily the 15% healing, and you get 80 AP with it. The bolt doesn't really matter that much. Like, it's nice to have, but like, whenever I've played with it, the bolt hasn't really been the key thing. It's more about, you use the bolt as you go into the fight just to get a conk stack, and it functions the same as Protobelt in that sense, where you're just using the item to get the stack, but then with the added 15% heat. Well, yeah, the 15% of damage dealt as it's healing you is really nice, because if you're going into a fight and you get your Conqueror stacked and you have this on top of it, then you are absolutely swimming in health. It's just so bloody expensive though. Ridiculous cost. And for that, I don't think the cost is actually worth it, because half of the build tree is items you don't need and you don't really want cluttering your inventory. There's a lot of reasons why Gunblade sucks. But yeah, the Revolver though, that side of it is fantastic. Revolver does 40 damage, which is like it basically empowers your auto attack every 40 seconds. I want to clarify, is it 40? Yes, I can't. 50 to 125 damage, 40 seconds. I knew I was mixing something up. Yeah, the damage scale is based on your level. I don't have the exact numbers for each level. I will try and find that. I might mention it in a later video if I can find the actual correct numbers, but all this stuff is quite unreliable online. Like, I'll be doing testing in a practice tool for certain things, and I'll realise that it's completely incorrect to what I thought it would be, and then I get in this whole debacle. But it's pretty cheap, 40 AP. We can compare it almost to a Blasting Wand. Blasting Wand is 300 less gold for the same amount of ability power, but it doesn't have the I can't see it now. It doesn't have the empowered auto attack. And the reason this empowered auto attack is really nice to have when you're playing Singed is it works so well into your trading patterns, because if you fling someone and then mid-air auto attack them, then you can do some really, really, really nasty damage with the Revolver and your fling. So that's something worth keeping in mind if you're building into Protobelt. Then definitely pick up the Revolver. And even if you aren't building into it straight away, Revolver is like a nice pickup. Bramble Vest is like essential, in my opinion, for a lot of matchups. So things such as Aatrox, Olaf, anyone with lifesteal like Nasus. Bramble was really good at shutting down Nasus early on. Pretty much negates his passive. I'm trying to think. There was another champion who this is really good against. I can't for the life of me remember it right now though. Yeah, so Fiora, of course. Um, yeah, so it's basically just there to apply grievous wounds without having to ignite the enemy every time you go for a fight. It gives you some survivability as well with the armor. It's only 1,000 gold. Really, really nice pickup. Like, if you're going into a lane with an Aatrox and the Aatrox proves that he's good or knows what he's doing, then if you pick up a Bramble Vest, you just completely negate most of what he's doing. Because all of the healing he gets from... so in one of his passives, all of the damage he does to enemy champions heals him. But if you're applying grievous wounds, because he's using auto attacks in between his abilities normally, then you're negating that. Also, his passive, where he just does that big like that big shove with his sword into you. I'm trying not to make it phallic. He gets a lot of health back, but obviously, if he's auto attacking you, then he's diminishing a lot of his healing. Plus, it reflects magic damage. Nice. It's quite good. Definitely worth picking up for 1,000 gold. It really, really does like absolutely shut people down. Like you can beat any Fiora, any Aatrox, any Olaf if you just have this item. It's fantastic. It's like pay 1,000 gold to win your lane. I would say it's almost like that. And then the more aggressive variant for going against AD laners is Seeker's Arm Guard. There's not massive amounts to say about this item. It gives you armor, it gives you ability power. So if you're going against a heavy AD comp, you might want to pick this up as like after your first main item. Just to sort of beef yourself up a bit. It's worth getting it early though, and leaving it as it is instead of just rushing straight into building a Zhonya's, because for each minion you kill, you get 0.5 armor and 0.5 ability power. So overall, and this stacks up to 30. So overall, it is 15 extra ability power and 15 extra armor, which is actually quite nice for a 1,100 item. It builds into Zhonya's, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay. So we're going on to... They change this item's name constantly, so I'm actually just going to look at it here. Catalyst of Aeons. So this item is actually like sleeper broken. It's actually really, really stupid on Singed. It builds into Abyssal Mask and obviously Rod of Ages, but Rod of Ages is too slow in the current meta to be useful. But if you're going against if you want to be aggro but tanky and you're going against AP characters, so maybe like an Echo Jungle or an AP mid laner, or like any of the AP top laners, this is a nice item to pick up. Just because you build it into the Abyssal Mask, and Abyssal Mask is such a lovely item. But this gives you health and mana. The mana isn't so useful, but if you're newer to Singed and you're not sure about the management of mana, then this is actually quite nice to pick up. And it makes you a bit beefier. But the passive on this is absolutely bonkers. It's ridiculous. So 15% of damage taken from champions is gained as mana. Sure, fine. It's whatever. But spending mana restores 20% of the cost as health, up to 15 per spell cast, which is fantastic with Singed. It's even better with a Mumu, but anyone with a toggle ability, you could just leave your Q on, and it heals you. And if you're dealing damage to champions, so say you're in a team fight or something, you're constantly getting this mana back, you constantly have your Q on, you're constantly dealing damage, getting mana back, and then the mana you're spending is restoring health to you with each tick of the damage. And it's not a huge amount of health you're getting back, but it really stacks up really quickly. A really, really nice item. Fantastic. I want to say I'm proud of it, but it doesn't seem right. Okay, let's see if we can actually look up Rylai's. Nope. Fantastic client, by the way. Rylai's is just your bog standard item. It makes your abilities slow. So your poison trail is an AoE slow, which lingers for a while, which is obviously really strong. There's not massive amounts to say about it. It gives you health and it gives you ability power, and they're good stats on it, and it's relatively cheap for a fully finished item. It gives you massive utility. So into lanes where your laner moves a lot, like they have a lot of my goodness, they have lots of movement abilities. So like a Fiora with her lunge, absolutely blanked. I've gone blank. Anyone that moves a lot. So if they're trying to weave around you in team fights and stuff like that, or they're just trying to get around you in 1v1s, being able to slow the area around you without your W, obviously, but your W on top of the poison trail is really useful, because you basically cut off a lot of areas in the lane or on the map where if they run through it, they're putting themselves at a disadvantage because they won't be able to react in time if someone jumps them, because they don't have the movement speed they need to be able to navigate away. This also works the other way around, where if you're running away from someone and you have a trail behind you that slows people that walk in it, then obviously you're going to outrun everyone, except maybe Olaf if he ults, or Master Yi if he ults, or Sejuani. But other than that, you should be fine. So yeah, it's really good as a base item. So if you're asking yourself this question of, damn, like what should I be building as first item in these matchups, then when in doubt, just build Rylai's, because Rylai's will give you utility regardless of what champion you're against. Sure, it's better against people with higher mobility because you start cancelling that out a bit more, but the slow AoE that you get from it is so useful. I mean, the best ability on Singed is by far his W. So to have a mini version of that, if you know how to use your poison trails correctly, is actually really, really, really useful. It's I want to say it's less useful in lower elos, but it absolutely stomps in lower elos. I really can't find many issues with Rylai's, if I'm honest. It's just a fantastic item, very well rounded, works perfectly with Singed's kit. And it also helps you like stick to people. If you get a fling off on someone, then they get slowed as well as displaced. So you can just stay on top of them constantly. Okay, let's talk proper about Liandry's. Why can I look at Revolver but I can't look at Liandry's? Come on, man. Bloody hell. But yeah, it's a really good item. It does loads of damage. It does more damage than Rylai's because of the passive, which does percentage health damage. So it makes this item really good for tank busting. So if you're against an Ornn, for example, and you might not necessarily need to kite him around with slows because you should be able to move faster than him. I say that, but it's Ornn. Anything can happen. But this item is actually extremely useful because each tick of your poison is applying the passive of Liandry's. So you're basically just shredding percentage health, which obviously you want if you're going against tanks because they have a lot of health. So a percentage of their health, if they got a lot of health, is a lot of health. The only downside is it doesn't really have any utility aspect of it. It is just pure damage. It gives you health as well, and ability power, but it is mainly just for tank busting or doing as much damage as you can in lane without having to utilize kiting patterns using Rylai's or using different forms of utility to get an advantage. I feel like it's falling a bit out of fashion just because the power creep in the top lane meta is really against Singed. The only interaction Singed has had is getting one nerf in Season 10 so far, and we're halfway through the season, so I'm not optimistic that Singed will still be usable or even playable without using utility from items in by the end of Season 10, unless they massively ever change their heart and they acknowledge that Singed is a champion. But that's for a different video. It's more expensive, but mainly you want to be buying this if you're going against tanks or beefy people, where you can get away with not having the slow or not having dodges, as we'll see with Protobelt. So, okay. Also worth noting, Leandri's, the passive damage that it doesn't actually interact with Conqueror, so if you're thinking, oh wow, this will stack Conqueror, it doesn't. Neither does Bramble or this Haunted Guys. Okay. So, Protobelt is actually really useful. I kind of slept on it earlier on when I was creating the guide and doing my own research. But it gives you health, it gives you ability power. Obviously, the Hex Tech Revolver is really useful. Oh my god. It would be lovely if I could show you the numbers for this. But I don't have it at hand at the moment. But, yeah. So, each shot will apply Rylai's passive, and it will apply Leandri's passive. So, because it counts as like using an ability almost. So, if you have Rylai's and you have Protobelt, then the shots you shoot with Protobelt will slow and apply the Rylai's passive, which is really useful for catching people or closing gaps, which the item seems to be designed to do. It also gives you extension outwards, so this is something that pertains mainly to higher elos. But a really big issue Singed has, obviously, is that he has no extension. And by extension, I mean his character model, that like nothing really goes beyond him other than maybe his W. But there isn't any, he doesn't have any skill shots to shoot out. He doesn't have anything where he can put an ability before him as opposed to his actual model. He has to go in and brunt the force. And he's quite unique in this sense because his model goes before his abilities, whereas with every other champion, their ability goes before their model. So like Darius, his Q extends outside of him and goes in front of him. His Apprehend goes out in front of him. His W increases his attack range a little bit, if I recall that correctly. I might be wrong, I'm not a Darius main. But the way to counter that, and this does specifically apply to high reload, where people will be freezing, so your character needs to have extension to be able to unclog those freezes. So if you're trying to freeze a lane, for example, a Darius might walk up and use his Q at max range to try and unclog the freeze. But for Singed, you can't do that. Because you have to just run in, like right into the wave, which is normally by their tower. So in really risky business, you have to run in, get abused by the enemy top laner, maybe the enemy tower, and maybe the enemy minions, just to try and unclog the freeze. And normally, if you're getting frozen on, you're at a disadvantage anyway, because they have complete lane control. So to be able to have Protobelt and just use Protobelt on the wave to completely clear it out, and you don't have to put yourself at any risk. Extremely useful. It does apply Conqueror stacks as well. To my knowledge, and this is based off of a game I had earlier. Each shot of Protobelt, if they hit different champions, they will apply stacks of Conqueror. So if you hit 2 people with your Protobelt, then you'll get 4 stacks. I might be wrong in that, but that's what I saw earlier. But I would have to look into this more and do some testing to be certain of it. So try it out in your games, and let me know if this is actually the case, because I've seen people saying it is, people saying it isn't, and I haven't actually gone around to testing it proper. Which is my bad. Okay, my god. We're 40 minutes in, and we've only got like 15, 16 more things to go through. No, 17. My god. Jeez Louise. Right. Okay, I'm gonna go a bit quicker on these, because a lot of the important things we've already discussed before. So with Dead Man's Plate, it gives you health, it gives you armor. I've seen people talking about this as the worst statted item in the game, and I think they're correct in saying that. The health and armor you get from this is not equivalent to the cost of gold. I would have to figure out exactly how much gold is worth to be able to definitely tell you why it's so off, but roundabout, it's off. But that's not what we care about. What we care about is it has health, it has armor, so you want to be building this into AD top laners, normally bruisers. There's a lot of those in top lane. And the Dreadnought and Crushing Blow passives are both really, really fantastic for Singed, because you're getting this continual movement speed increase, which is up to 60, which is pretty brilliant. So you get that. You can run around a map, influence it faster, etc., etc. All that nice stuff that comes with move speed. But then the Crushing Blow aspect of it is really, really amazing on Singed, because you run up to someone with the extra move speed, they can't get away from you because you're faster than them. You use your fling, and then whilst they're mid-air, you do a mid-air auto-attack, which applies Crushing Blow, which just absolutely hammers them and slows them by 50%. Which just completely, like, knocks them off their feet. You've just absolutely, like, controlled this one person. You've ran into the team fight with all your move speed. You found the enemy Caitlyn or whatnot. You fling her, you auto attack her. She can't do anything for like 2 to 3 seconds in that team fight, and you're putting her in an awful spot. Really nice item for getting picks. You want to be picking this up. You want to be picking this up when you're against bruisers, AD comps, and in similar scenarios where you need to be able to catch someone. That is essentially the same as Righteous Glory. Righteous Glory actually gives you really nice stats. It's cheaper. It gives you health, mana, armor, base regen, CDR. And the active for it just gives you a bunch of move speed, so you can just shoot yourself right into the enemy team comp, catch the ADC, and keep in mind, it has a shockwave that you can reactivate. That basically does a Randuin's passive, which is obviously fantastic for catching enemy people. So if they have a fed squishy on their team that needs to be handled, your go-to is Dead Man's Plate or Righteous Glory. Really, really fantastic items for game picks. Okay, so Morellonomicon, it's basically the AP version of why you would get Bramble Vest. So I'm going to consider Morellonomicon and I'm going to consider Thornmail in the same vein. just because their main function is to apply grievous wounds. Morellonomicon is actually a lot better for doing that because you can apply grievous wounds with your Q and your E and yeah, those. I'm thinking we have more abilities. And it's only 100 gold more than the Bramble Vest. And it gives you ability power and it gives you health, which are both fantastic things. And the magic penetration is just to die for. So yeah, Morellonomicon is a fantastic item. You should definitely be building it if the enemy team has something like a Vladimir or a Katarina or anyone that heals a lot but doesn't necessarily auto-attack you. So anyone with Conqueror, actually, as well. There's so many champions that take Conqueror and they don't really rely on auto-attacking you that much. Like a Cassiopeia, for example. Cassiopeia does not care about auto-attacks. But if you can get your Morellonomicon to apply on her, you massively, massively weaken her as a threat. Really useful item. And that's where Thornmail falls short, because Thornmail relies on the enemy champion auto-attacking you. But it's extremely good in like the AD matchups where so for example, if you build Bramble Vest into a Fiora but she still gets fed, what do you do then? You go for the Thornmail. Because then she can't engage with you. So she has 4 champions out of 5 that she can attack, and you just make sure you just stick on her in team fights because she won't be able to fight back. Well, at least she shouldn't be able to. There's always human error involved, but on paper, this is how it should work out. So, yeah, Thornmail is not incredible. It's really useful in those certain scenarios, so like an Aatrox, a Fiora, an Olaf, those sort of people who rely on getting their auto attacks in to get health back. If you're able to cancel that out, then you're in a very good shape. But Morellonomicon applying the grievous wounds is like unchallenged best way of applying grievous wounds, because you could run through an entire team and just negate all of their healing. And like just take a second to think about how much healing is in the game nowadays. Absolutely ridiculous amounts. There's Conqueror, supports, the Summoner spell, items like Corrupting Potion, Refill, health pots, etc., abilities, all of that absolutely blasted. Now I've added a handful of support items. This used to be more meta in the later stages of Season 9, if I recall correctly, and in earlier seasons, Singed wasn't really a champion, per se. He wasn't good at being a damage champion. He was more like a walking minion in a lot of cases. So people would just build him, and most notably Anken, the OG Anken, most notably built him as just a heavy on support. The same sort of thing still works. I've seen a bit of a resurgence in very high tier play. So I wouldn't recommend this for lower elos because you don't need to be building support. You can be building AP and getting away with just carrying the games on your own. But in high relos where people know how to deal with Singed very effectively, being able to build yourself as a support is actually really useful. So yeah, with the support items, I wanted to talk about it as a overall play style as opposed to talking about the specific items and the benefits of the specific items, because they're all cheap, they all have really nice stats on them. Of course the Ardent doesn't work, the one with the most text on it, for goodness sake. There's also something which is fun to note. With Ardent, you wouldn't normally build it as part of the support things, but if you have the Font of Life rune, then if you buy a Rylai's, then anyone you damage with an ability is going to apply Font of Life healing to your allies. So if any of your allies hit any of the champions you've slowed, then they'll get the Ardent proc on themselves, which is really, really fantastic if you've got something like a Master Yi or an Udyr on your team, or your ADC is getting really strong. The playstyle is sort of fallen out of fashion just because going AP and going with Conqueror is much better. But it's still a possibility. It's quite entertaining to play. We're talking about Abyssal Mask earlier, so there's not really anything I need to talk about. It's just the upgraded version of the Catalyst of Aeons. Is that the correct name now? My goodness, where is it? Ah! Show me it. No, I'm not going to find out. I can't remember the name of it. I think that's it. Yeah, you want to be building this, and I should clarify, with the support items, you want to be building that if you're in higher elos and you find yourself getting stomped in games, so you focus on winning lanes for other people as opposed to winning your own lane. I don't think the meta is in a desperate enough state to have to do this yet, but I think we're moving towards it. I think the power creep is leaving us behind a bit, like it does every season. We might have to return to going support if my goodness, supportive singed. But yeah. Anyway, Abyssal Mask, really nice item if you're playing against AP bullies, basically. Because you're still retaining your ability to do damage, so you can still go toe for toe. But you're also getting the magic resist. It's like when consider this. When you see the enemy top laner building, or any enemy champion building adaptive helm, that's the similar sort of reasoning. Because they're trying to negate your Q, obviously. You want to be building Abyssal Mask in a similar sense, that you want to be negating the damage the enemy top laner or enemy mid laner or enemy whoever is pain in the arse. You want to negate the damage they're doing, but still be able to go toe for toe with them. You still want to be able to fight them, but you want to be able to survive it more so. Also, the passives on it are the same as the Catalyst of Aeons, which are bonkers. So, wonderful. Same sort of thing applies with Banshee's Veil. This is a really, 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 really rarely bought item. I think I've only seen 2 people ever buy it in all of the matches I've watched. I understand why. It's a relatively hefty price for not having any like health. And here's some really interesting thing about how the game works. So, magic resist, generally speaking, is less impactful than getting armor or getting health, because the way it works is a bit different. So that's why when you go for when you're looking at your runes and you have those like little mini mastery things, like where you can choose to get like 10 attack speed or 8 adaptive force, etc. That's why you get 6 armor on that, but you get 8 magic resist. Because the power creep on AP abilities is higher than the power creep on AD abilities. So to balance it out, it's like that. It's really weird. So basically, magic resist is worth less than armor. So seeing 60 magic resist looks nice, but in reality, it is less impactful. But it's still good if you're going against heavy AP comps, especially like things like Veigar. The spell shield can be really useful for getting out of his E. There's loads of stuff. Just take a second to look in your collection, look at the different champions, and just think, okay, what is really like doing my head in here? Or if you're in a match, you want to be building this as like the 5th item. You don't want to be getting it early. It's not as impactful early on, but in those later team fights, having the spell shield up is absolutely fantastic. You can really pull off some unexpected things. where you get into the heart of the enemy team without them thinking you can. So they think, oh yeah, no, we have the Vagar cage, so he won't be able to get in, etc. The ability power, cooldown reduction, and magic resist are all really nice things as well to go with that. It's a nice little bundle for if you're going against AP, but you still need to be dealing damage, and you need that survivability of the spell shield, like a really good utility in that. Pretty much the same thing, actually, with Zhonya's. Zhonya's is just the armor counterpart to this. And as you can see, 45 armor, 75 ability power, and 10% cooldown reduction. It's exactly the same as Banshee's Veil, except Banshee's Veil gives you 15 more magic resist to counteract it. So they are basically the same item, they just have very different effects. The stasis is generally better because you can avoid a lot of stuff. So whereas with the Banshee's Veil, you run into the enemy team comp and you forfeit your spell shield to be able to get into there, what do you do then? Normally you get blown up, or if you're fast enough and tanky enough, you manage to get out, and then you hope your team cleans up. With Zhonya's, you do the exact same thing. Maybe you can't get into team fights as easily because you have to wait out the cage, etc. But once you get into the heart of the enemy team, you just press Zhonya's, and you hope your team can follow up and get the heat off of you, as it were. Generally, this works. There's a lot of outplay potential in the really, really ridiculous stasis passive, as you can see by all of the stopwatch montages of people doing amazing things. Also, building it is actually quite nice because you like picking up Seeker's Arm Guard. The Fiendish Codex is pretty good. So yeah, these two you can consider the same roundabout. Void Staff just gives you magic penetration, and ability power. So it's not really that impactful. It's a bit lackluster for an item, but it's one of the cheaper AP items that gives you a real boost to your damage. I don't normally recommend it, only as last items, and that's only if you're really ahead and you really need to just be doing as much damage as you can. But it's a very niche pick, so it's worth noting that it's there, but keeping it in your peripheries almost. I acknowledge that Void Staff is there as an option for me to pick up, but I need to have it in a very, very specific scenario to make it really shine. And now the best part, the boots. This is where I'm going to get all the hate. I can already feel it. If anyone actually has watched to the end of this, this is about an hour long now of just me talking about items in a video game. Kind of pathetic if you're still here, but here we are. What you want to do with boots, don't look at anything else. Just look at Ninja Tabis or Mercury Treads. That's my hardline opinion of boots. If you're not getting the defensive boots, you're an idiot. Don't buy boots. The exceptions, potentially, are Sorcerer's Shoes. Although they feel very lackluster when you actually play with them. It's better to just get an Oblivion Orb and build more defense in your boots. However, people do quite like these. So I know I'm going to get hate for it. And this comes all the way back full circle to the bit near the beginning where I said a lot of it's based on preference. So if you're going to get Sorcerer's Shoes, fine. But if they start to feel lackluster, it's because they are lackluster. And if you're getting into Singed, or you're trying to get better at Singed, and one of the things you're doing is building Sorcerer's Shoes, then I can advise against it, because it doesn't give you what you need in boots. Other than the move speed, obviously. But yeah, it's just way too lackluster. 18 plus magic penetration isn't worth it if it doesn't come with defensive stats alongside it. Because otherwise you're just building yourself as a glass cannon, and Singed really can't do that, because if we go back to the point about Protobelt and how you need extension, you really can't have extension and be a glass cannon. That's why things like Rabadon's Deathcap, Spellbinder, Sorcerer's Shoes, they just don't work on Singed. Unless you're in a very low elo where you can abuse it as a Smurf. But again, anything is permitted when you're playing on a Smurf. So Sorcerer's Shoes, out of picture. Say goodbye to them. Never put them on again. Actually, let's not even look at them. Disgusting, disgraceful. Obviously, and this is really the basics of the game. You get Ninja Tab Eyes, which are the armor ones. When the enemy team has an AD top laner, or they have heavy AD in every other lane. Right? Sometimes, so let's say for example you're playing against a Maokai, but the enemy Vayne has gotten really fed in bot lane. What do you do there? Because obviously you want to get the Mercury Treads to counteract Maokai, because it gives you tenacity and it gives you magic resist. So he's going to do less damage, and he's going to snare you and knock you back and all this jazz for less. But then as soon as you get into a team fight, you have no defense against auto attack, so that Vayne is just going to rip you a new one. So what do? You are allowed to sell your boots. And for the most part, people stick to one pair of boots. Because you're losing gold, obviously. But the flexibility you get from it is something you have to call by yourself. You have to think, well, is it worth forfeiting this amount of gold to move into the next phase of the game in a more comfortable way, or a more impactful way? Normally it's worth it. However, if you really, really cannot fathom selling your boots and buying a different pair, like it's almost a pride thing. In that scenario, if the enemy ADC is fed, and comparing it from Maokai to a Vayne, you gotta think to yourself, I'm building these defensive boots to mitigate damage. Who does more damage, a Maokai or a fed Vayne? Obviously a fed Vayne. So you go for the armor. It doesn't matter if you get beaten up by a tree in lane. You want to get the armor. But let's say there's an Echo jungle on the enemy team. He's pretty strong. You want to wrap back around, and you want to get the MR boots. You want to get the Mercury Treads, right? Because 2 APs, you want to counter with magic resist. Even if the Vayne is like 1,000,000. Because it's going to be more useful for you in that moment, and in going into mid game even, to be able to survive those ganks, so those don't snowball. You can at least try and rein things in at top lane by just being unkillable and putting a lot of pressure down. And that's one way where you can start to shut down the enemy bot lane without even leaving your lane. Because you're trying to pull people top, you're trying to create as much pressure top as you can, but you're trying to survive, because if you die, you lose all that pressure. So you need to be building up that pressure as if you're like a crock pot that's about to blow up. If you die, then you just blow up and blah blah blah. It doesn't matter. But if you survive and you keep them top for ages, this goes back to proxying ideas, and now we're coming full circle with Singed as a champion. If you're bringing that pressure top, then your jungler can see it as, oh, okay, so Singed has got the top side of the map covered. He's doing fine. He's running rings around him. Fantastic. I can focus on mid and I can focus on bot. If your mid laner gets fed, most of the time in this meta, your mid laner is playing a burst mage, so like a Syndra or something along those lines. So you're thinking, okay, yeah, if the jungler helps the mid laner, then the mid laner can blow up the enemy ADC, and then we can start to shut her down. Alternatively, the jungler could just camp bot and make it a 3v2 at bot lane, and then try and just put so much pressure on the enemy Vayne that she makes mistakes, gets killed a few times, your team catches up. All of this just from picking your boots, right? It's fantastic. Bloody brilliant champion. I wish Riot would acknowledge him, but they won't. And Swifties, I have missed one item, just because I'm an idiot. But I will talk about that just in a second. So with Swifties, they're kind of alright. They had a buff recently which gave them a lot of move speed, and their price is obviously 900. There's a lot of people who ardently support the Swifties purchase. Say, no, Swifties best boots you can ever get. And I completely disagree, but I can see where they're coming from. So this is something I would suggest to try out. It feels really good getting them, but not as good as when you get the defensive boots. The main issue is you already have move speed from your passive, your ultimate, and if you're taking Ghost, or if you're taking Righteous Glory. If you're taking Dead Man's Plate, then the Juggernaut move speed. So having Swifties doesn't really matter so much. And also you have to consider the movement speed soft cap, where if you have a certain threshold of move speed, then the move speed effects that get applied to you actually diminish a bit. So you almost risk losing a bit of move speed on your ult or on Ghost to the soft cap. So I think it's too much move speed and not enough defense in this item. Because why would you want to just go all out with move speed when you can get move speed and defensive stats? And tenacity and the auto attack. What's the word I'm looking for? The auto attack diminishment that you get from Ninja Tabis. So we can say goodbye to those as well. Well, actually, no. You can play them if you want, but I don't advise them. Also, another thing to note is with the movement slowing effects are reduced by 25%. It looks quite nice, but with tenacity, you just accelerate the slow, so it wears off faster, which is generally better from testing. Like, you can cover more ground if you just take the brunt force of the slow straight away, and then it diminishes faster. But that is still subject to a fair bit of testing. Whew. One last item. Spirit Visage. Really basic. Really good stats. You want to build this if they have AP damage. It's actually one of the staple items I like to build because it works so amazingly with Conqueror. It's almost like a mini Gunblade in a sense. Because you get 30% more healing from your Conqueror. Your Conqueror is constantly going off. You can rack up some really good healing numbers if you get Spirit Visage. Whew. Alright. Just going over my notes again, seeing if there's anything I've missed. There is something I've missed, but it's very, very niche. Its execution is cooling or culling, I can't remember. People are trying it out as a form of mini Morellonomicon. So if you're going against Vladimir or someone, you buy this item so that you auto attack so you can win the fights. It seems kind of cheesy. I don't have enough people trying it out at the moment for me. So if you fancy spending 800 gold and letting me know how it goes, that would be fantastic. Please be my guinea pigs. But yeah, oh my goodness, I really should have broken this video up. But yeah, here it is. There it is. Sorted. Done. I'm going to end the video now. I really hope this is useful. If there's anything you have an issue with, or anything where you think, Mark's a bloody idiot, this guy needs to delete his channel, please let me know. Alright, on that joyful note, goodbye.